how you make scones. You can make plain scones, you can make fruit scones, you can make cheese scones. I've given you the choice between a fruit or a cheese scone. I'm going to make the fruit ones. So into the bowl I've put 250 grams of self-raising flour. I've used self-raising flour because it has got a raising agent added into it already. It's got baking powder added. And when that goes in the oven, it's going to produce carbon dioxide and it's going to help to make the scones rise so they're nice and light. Then we're going to go in with some butter. Now this could be margarine if you wanted it to be, but hard margarine if you're using margarine. I like using butter, it gives a nice buttery taste to your food. And we're using about 40 grams of this. So I'm just going to put it in the flour and break it up into slightly smaller pieces. You could cut it up with a knife before you add it in if you prefer. And then we're going to rub that butter into the flour until all of the lumps are gone. And I would encourage you to give the bowl a shake, because any lumps that are in there will always rise to the top, and that's how you'll know that they're all gone. Because I'm making fruit scones, I'm going to add a little bit of caster sugar. That's got 25 grams of caster sugar, and then 75 grams of sultanas to go in there. And then we stir all of that around, and then we're going to bind the ingredients together with some milk. And you can measure your milk in two different ways. First of all, you've got the measuring jug, and if you have a look really closely, you can see that there's 100 mils at the bottom and then 200 mils above it. So you've got 3 lines in between. The big one in the middle is 150 and the one there is going to be 125. It's quite difficult to measure that accurately, and if you are going to use the jug, pop it onto the edge of the work surface, get down so your eyes are at the right level, and then you can pour it in. Wait for it to stop wobbling around and then make sure it's in the right place. Equally, you could use the scales. So put an empty container on the scales, turn it on. If you've got these scales, you can press the unit button until it says millilitres at the top. See how accurate my weighing was. There we go. See, I measured out a tiny bit too much, 128. So I took a little bit of that away. 124. Right, that's close enough. So I'm going to pour almost all of that in. The reason I'm going to leave a tiny bit out is if I do make it too wet, I can't take any of it away. Okay, that's okay. I think I will need that last drop. And using your tablespoon, you're just going to mix all of the ingredients together. If you were making the cheese scones, you would add grated cheese into your mixture, and you would also use a little bit of mustard powder. People don't always like the idea of that because they think it's going to be too strong, but you use such a tiny amount that it's fine. Now, you'll probably think that looks a little bit too dry, but I think once I get my hands in and I start squeezing the mixture together, I think it should start to come together, and I'm aiming for a ball of dough. Okay, so I'm not making bread, I don't need to knead the mixture as such, but I'm just going to squeeze it together and make sure it all comes together. If that was too wet, it would be sticky, it would be sticking to my hands, it would be sticking to the work surface, it would be a bit of a nightmare to work with. If that happens, you might need to sprinkle a little bit of flour onto the work surface. If it's a little bit too dry and it's cracking and it won't stick together, then you might feel that you need to add a little bit more of the milk. I think mine, if I just give it a little bit of a squeeze, I think that's going to be okay. So, just start off with it in a ball on the work surface, press it down with the palm of your hand. We're aiming for the thickness of this to be about 2 to 3 centimetres thick. Don't be tempted to roll it too thin. That's what people normally do. And then you're going to take a cutter. I've got 2 different size cutters. Either of these should be fine. And then press it down, give it a little wiggle, and then you should be able to lift that out. Okay. and place it onto a baking tray, which has got some baking paper on it to stop them from sticking. The oven's already on. I've got that on a 180 or a gas mark 5. And you can see I'm trying to be really economical and not have too much wastage there. And I can't get another one out of that, so I'm just going to squeeze that together. Try and make sure it's the same thickness as the first lot. I don't all of a sudden want some that are like little pancakes. And we'll just continue with that until we've managed to use all of the mixture. Okay, so I've managed to make 8 out of this mixture. I've got a tiny bit of mixture left that is not worth keeping, to be honest. And I've got a little drop of milk left, so I'm just going to brush a tiny bit of that on the top. You don't have to. Sometimes we use egg as a glaze on the top of things. We don't really want them glazed as such. And if you haven't got any spare milk, it doesn't matter, it's not necessary. And then I'm going to pop those into the oven. The oven's hot already, so it's going to go into a hot oven. I'm going to use oven gloves when I'm putting them in and out for safety. And I'm going to give those about 15 minutes to start off. Check the scones, they've had 15 minutes in the oven. You can see they're a nice golden brown colour on the top and they're cooked all the way through. If I were to cook them any longer, I'm at risk of burning the fruit which is on the top. Now I do say that the cooking time is 10 to 15 minutes. If you've made yours the correct thickness like mine, they'll take about 15 minutes. Some people roll theirs extremely thin on occasions, and if you've done that, then yours might only take 10. You can either eat these as they are, or you can cut them in half. You could put some butter inside them, or you could serve them with some cream and jam.